The morning light on Atlas Ring Station was never real, yet it still crept across the walls like dawn. Artificial sunbeams poured through reinforced glass, touching metal floors and silent rooms that once knew laughter. Mark Hale sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his tired eyes as the station's hum filled the silence. 6 months had passed since Nora, his wife, his anchor, was gone, and the emptiness beside him still felt heavier than gravity itself. He stood in front of the mirror, a ghost staring back. The dark circles under his eyes told stories of sleepless nights and half-finished repairs. His uniform, though clean, hung loose. The badge still read Chief Engineer, Sector C, 19, but he felt like an old machine running on borrowed time. A voice broke through the silence. "Dad, I can't find my class slate." Mark sighed. "Check under the couch, Maya." His daughter's small footsteps echoed across the compact apartment. At 7 years old, Maya carried her mother's light in her smile, but that light was dimming. He found her digging through piles of laundry, her golden curls sticking out wildly. "Found it," she said proudly, holding the tablet high like treasure. "Good job," he said softly. "Now come on. Breakfast before the shift starts." The food synthesizer flickered to life, then beeped angrily. "System error," it blinked in red letters. Mark muttered under his breath. "Dad, you said a bad word." Maya giggled. He chuckled weakly. "I know. I'm sorry." He managed to create 2 bowls of something close to oatmeal. It wasn't perfect, but Maya didn't complain. She never did. She was too used to broken things. "I have to go in early," he told her as she ate slowly. "Mrs. Voss will take you to school." Her spoon stopped midair. "But you promised we'd eat together today." "I know, sweetheart." Guilt stung like static. "The station needs fixing again." Her little shoulders slumped. "You always say that." Mark knelt beside her chair. "I'll make it up to you. This weekend, we'll go to the observation deck. We'll see the stars together, just like before." Her eyes lifted, hope flickering. "Promise. Cross my heart." When he kissed her forehead, he felt how fragile she was, how much smaller their world had become. Hours later, the station's corridors buzzed with life. Humans, aliens, drones, all moving in patterns of duty. To most, Atlas Ring was a beacon of peace. To Mark, it was a floating reminder of everything he'd lost. He worked through the day fixing air regulators, power coils, and failing circuits. Every sound reminded him of Nora's laughter, echoing in his mind like static through a radio. By evening, he was home again, exhausted, empty, surrounded by clutter and silence. The dishes were still in the sink, toys scattered like ruins. A message from Maya's teacher blinked on his wrist communicator. Homework incomplete again. He dropped onto the couch. His body ached. His heart more so. He couldn't keep doing this, balancing maintenance shifts, parenting alone, pretending everything was fine. The government's childcare programs were too expensive. His neighbors too busy. He needed help. Someone. Anyone. Mark grabbed his tablet and began typing an ad. Single human father seeks domestic help. Duties, childcare, meal prep, light cleaning. All species welcome. Competitive pay. His thumb hovered over send. He hesitated. It felt like giving up. Like admitting he couldn't carry the weight Nora left behind. He whispered to the empty room. "What would you do, Nora?" No answer came. Only the hum of the recycler. Then Maya appeared again, sleepy-eyed in her pajamas. "Daddy, I'm hungry." He checked the time, 20:30. He'd forgotten dinner. Again. He found a protein bar and a fruit ration. Maya ate quietly, looking up at him. "What are you doing?" "Just getting us some help," he said, forcing a smile. "Someone who can make things easier when I'm working." Her eyes brightened. "Like a new mommy?" Mark froze. "No, honey. Just someone to help out." "Oh." Her voice fell soft. "I miss having a mommy." "I miss her too," he whispered. When Maya fell asleep, he stared at the unfinished message again. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. Slowly, he tapped send. Minutes later, his tablet buzzed. New message received. Applicant, Sarah Allen Whitey. Requesting interview. Mark leaned back, heart uncertain but curious. Somewhere deep in the void, change had just answered. The next morning arrived in its usual rhythm, station lights flickering to simulate sunrise, corridors humming with life. But inside Mark Hale's apartment, the air felt heavier, charged with nervous energy. He'd barely slept. Every few hours, his eyes opened to that same glowing message on his tablet. Applicant, Sarah Allen YD, interview confirmed. 10 a.m. By 9:30, Mark was pacing like a man awaiting judgment. The apartment looked decent for once. He had shoved laundry into closets, wiped down the counters, and forced Maya to pick up her toys. "Dad, why are you cleaning so much?" she asked suspiciously. "We're expecting someone. Be polite, okay?" "Is it a robot?" she asked, eyes wide. "No, a person." "Well," he hesitated, "kind of." The door chime rang precisely at 10. Mark took a deep breath and opened the door. What he saw froze him in place. The woman standing there was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her skin was a soft blue shimmer, like sunlight on ocean waves. Her face, gentle, intelligent, alert, was framed by tendrils of silver-white hair tied neatly behind her head. She wore a simple gray uniform, the kind issued to refugees. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice like calm water. "I am Sarah Allen YD. I hope my arrival is acceptable." Behind her, a small girl peeked out, barely 6 or 7 years old, the same soft blue hue, clutching a worn blanket. Mark blinked. "Oh, yes. Of course. Please, come in." As they stepped inside, the air shifted, strange, quiet, but peaceful. Maya came running from her room, holding something behind her back. "Dad, is that her? Is that the new helper?" Mark gave her a warning look, but it was too late. Maya held up a crooked, glitter-covered sign. It read in messy handwriting, "Welcome to our home." Sarah smiled, a real, soft smile that made the entire room brighter. "It is beautiful," she said gently, bending slightly to meet Maya's eyes. "You made this?" Maya nodded, proud. "I used all the glitter." "I can tell," Mark muttered, noticing trails of sparkles on the floor. Then, with childlike curiosity, Maya blurted out, "You're blue. That's so cool." Mark felt heat rise in his face. "Maya," but Sarah only laughed, a sound like distant wind chimes. "It is quite all right. Yes, I am blue. My people are called Nidari." Sarah's daughter peeked from behind her mother's leg. Maya grinned and offered her the sign. "Here, you can keep it. Want to see my room?" Before Mark or Sarah could stop them, the two little girls vanished down the hall in a blur of giggles and footsteps. "Children adapt fast," Sarah said softly, watching them go. "Perhaps faster than we do." Mark smiled faintly. "You can say that again." He gestured to the sofa. "Please sit down. Would you like something to drink?" "My food printer still hates me, but I can manage water." "Water will do," she replied. While he poured, Sarah's eyes roamed quietly around the apartment. The faded photos, the scattered tools, the small signs of struggle and love mixed together. "You built this life yourself," she said, more observation than compliment. He handed her the glass. "Trying to. It's been hard since Nora passed." "I understand," she said softly. "My husband died too. He was a diplomat. Our outpost was attacked. My daughter and I were relocated here 3 weeks ago." Their eyes met. A moment of quiet recognition between two survivors of different worlds. Then a crash shattered it. A high-pitched cry followed. They rushed to Maya's room. A small figurine, a crystal sculpture, lay in pieces. The blue child, IRI, stood trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," Maya said quickly. "I didn't mean to. She was showing it to me, and it fell." Sarah knelt beside her daughter, speaking in a soft alien tongue. Her tendrils drooped with sorrow. "It was her father's gift," she explained to Mark. "The last thing she has of him." Mark crouched down, gently lifting the fragments. "Maybe. I can fix it." Sarah looked surprised. "You can repair something that delicate?" "I can try," he said simply. "I fix things for a living." Maya wiped her nose. "He really can. He fixes everything on the station." Two small girls stared at him with the same fragile hope. Sarah's calm gaze joined theirs. The engineer in him couldn't say no. Later, when Sarah and IRI left, the apartment felt strangely quiet again. But not the same kind of quiet as before. This one carried a heartbeat. Mark stood by the window, looking out at the endless swirl of stars. A widow, a child, a chance. For the first time in months, the emptiness didn't feel like the end. It felt like the start of something he couldn't yet name. 3 days passed since the interview, and Mark Hale's small apartment felt different now. It wasn't just cleaner, it breathed again. Laughter had returned to its corners. The sound of 2 children playing drifted down the hallway like forgotten music. Still, one thing lingered in Mark's mind. the broken figurine that lay carefully disassembled on his workbench. It wasn't just a keepsake. It was a piece of someone's past, someone's love, and he had promised to fix it. The workshop lights hummed softly as Mark leaned over the delicate fragments under a magnifier. His hands moved with the precision of a surgeon. Each piece was no bigger than a fingernail, the cracks spiderwebbed and sharp. He worked patiently, using fine adhesive polymers and micro tools designed for repairing station circuits. One slip, and it's gone forever, he told himself. He didn't notice the time until a quiet knock came at the door. Mark. Sarah stood there, holding 2 steaming mugs. Her silver-white tendrils were loose tonight, framing her calm, otherworldly face. She wore a simple robe the color of mist. "I thought you could use this," she said, stepping inside. "The children are asleep." Mark smiled, setting down his tool. "You didn't have to. Hospitality is a habit of my people," she said with a faint smile. "And I was curious." She walked closer to the workbench. Her eyes widened when she saw the near-complete figurine. "You repaired it?" "Almost," Mark said, holding his breath as he positioned the final shard. He pressed it gently into place. The light caught on the crystal surface, hiding the seams perfectly. "There." Sarah leaned closer, wonder in her voice. "It's beautiful. I cannot believe you restored it." "It was worth the effort," Mark said, finally relaxing. "It reminded me of something Nora used to say. Nothing broken stays broken if someone still cares enough to fix it." Their eyes met, and for a moment the silence said everything words could not. Sarah looked down at the figurine again. "You have gifted my daughter more than a toy, Mark Hale. You have returned a memory." Mark cleared his throat, pretending to adjust a tool. "Just doing what I can." She smiled softly, then hesitated. "There is another reason I came. The refugee center informed me today that my housing contract ends in 10 days. He frowned. "They're not giving you an extension?" She shook her head. "Not yet. Too many refugees, too few quarters. Bureaucracy moves slowly, as humans say." He looked around the apartment, the toys scattered again, the small signs of chaos that came with raising a child alone. The words came before he could stop them. "You could stay here. You and I mean, just temporarily. Until you find something stable." Sarah blinked in surprise. "You would offer a shelter?" "Why not?" Mark said quickly. "The girls get along. You already help out. It makes sense." Sarah's tendrils shifted, an emotion he couldn't read. "Among my people, such an offer carries meaning. Shelter implies connection, a form of trust beyond words." Mark rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly awkward. "Among humans, it just means helping a friend." She studied him for a long moment, her sea-green eyes reflecting the glow of the workbench light. "You are a strange man, Mark Hale. Generous, yet uncertain. I'll take that as a compliment." Then she did something unexpected. She stepped forward and gently placed her palm against his. Her skin was warm, almost electric. A tingling spread up his arm. "In Nidari tradition," she said softly, "we seal gratitude through contact. A gesture of trust." Mark swallowed. "Well, thank you." Their hands lingered a second longer than needed. When she finally withdrew, the air felt heavier, charged with something new. "Good night, Mark Hale," she said, voice softer now. "And thank you for mending more than crystal tonight." After she left, Mark stood in silence, the faint scent of her tea still in the air. He looked at his hand, still tingling where her touch had been, and then at the figurine gleaming under the lamp. 2 fragile things, both broken once. Both restored, piece by piece. For the first time in a long while, Mark didn't feel like a man patching holes in a dying system. He felt human again. He shut off the light and whispered into the quiet, "Welcome home, Sarah." Outside the viewport, the gas giant turned slowly, its storms glowing gold and blue against the dark. Somewhere deep in the ring's hum, the engineer's promise had already begun to change more than he knew. The following week unfolded like a quiet storm, slow, steady, and full of unexpected warmth. Sarah Allen YD and her daughter Ira moved into Mark's small apartment, bringing with them a calm energy that filled the once empty air. The girls' laughter became a daily rhythm, echoing through the hallways like a forgotten melody. But on the Atlas ring, nothing remained unnoticed for long. Moving day began with confusion and incense. Mark had expected boxes, bags, and perhaps a transport drone. Instead, he opened his door to find Sarah standing in the corridor, holding a small, silver bowl that released a fragrant blue smoke. She wore a long, flowing robe threaded with silver patterns that shimmered as she moved. "What's that?" he asked, wary but intrigued. "It's part of our tradition," she replied. "We call it the ritual of new dwelling. Before settling, we cleanse the space to make it truly ours." Mark hesitated. "You're going to cleanse my apartment?" Sarah smiled, already stepping inside. "Our apartment now. It must accept both our energies." Before he could respond, she began moving gracefully from room to room, murmuring words in her native tongue. Maya and Iri followed close behind, mimicking her hand motions, their laughter bubbling through the sweet-scented haze. The smoke swirled through the air vents, catching in the light, painting the dull gray metal with color. Mark leaned against the doorway, arms folded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but it feels different in here." "It feels alive," Sarah said, her tendrils shimmering faintly. "Every home should." She stopped before him, holding the bowl. "Now the final step. The primary resident must accept the new energy. What do I do?" "Breathe it in, and speak your acceptance." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Completely." He sighed and leaned forward, inhaling the warm, spiced air. "I accept the new energy into my home." Sarah tilted her head, smiling, perhaps with more conviction. He straightened his shoulders. "I accept these new energies into our home." Her smile deepened. "Better." She pressed her palm gently to his. The joining of essences completes the ritual. The contact sent a subtle warmth through his skin, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. When she pulled away, he wasn't sure if it was the incense or something else that made the room feel suddenly warmer. The rest of the day passed in a blur of small moments, arranging furniture, teaching the girls where things went, sharing stories. Maya and Iri decorated the spare room with paper stars and ribbons, declaring it the Galaxy Room. For the first time in years, the apartment felt full. By evening, they all sat around the table eating a mix of human and Nidari food, synthetic pasta paired with bright blue fruit from the refugee center. Maya made silly faces. Iri giggled. Sarah laughed softly. And Mark, for once, forgot to feel tired. Yet outside their little bubble of peace, whispers had begun to spread. At work, Mark noticed the looks. Colleagues nudged each other when he passed. "Heard you've got an alien roommate," one technician said with a grin. "She's my housekeeper," Mark replied flatly. "Sure," the man teased. "Housekeeper? That why you're smiling more these days?" Mark ignored him, but the rumors didn't stop. By midday, his supervisor called him in. "Don't make waves, Hale. We've got enough political tension between species without personal entanglements." When he returned home, the tension in his shoulders didn't fade. But the moment the door opened and Maya rushed to hug him, it loosened a little. "Daddy, look. We made Nidari tea." Sarah stood by the counter, steam rising from the pot. "I hope you don't mind. It's an acquired taste." Mark smiled tiredly. "If it's warm and not synthetic, I don't mind at all." Later, as the girls slept, Sarah sat across from him at the small kitchen table. The station lights dimmed to night mode, bathing everything in soft gold. "They talk, don't they?" she asked quietly. "Who? Your people." "My people. Both." He sighed. "They always do. Humans gossip. So do aliens, it seems." Sarah looked into her cup. "Where I come from, accepting shelter from a man, especially one outside the clan, implies a bond. Many Nidari would not understand our arrangement." Mark met her eyes. "And you?" She hesitated. "I understand kindness. That is enough for now." Outside the viewport, the gas giant rolled in silence. Inside, a fragile piece glowed like a candle, small but defiant. For the first time, Atlas Ring didn't feel like just another station in the void. It felt like a home, imperfect, unconventional, and quietly alive. Life aboard Atlas Ring Station soon settled into a fragile routine. Mornings smelled of Nidari tea and synthetic toast. Evenings filled with laughter as Maya and Iri invented games using spare engineering parts. To anyone passing by, it might have looked like a small, ordinary family. A human engineer, an alien widow, and two inseparable children. But peace on the Atlas never lasted long. It began with small things, glances, whispers, little signs that people noticed more than they spoke. A technician smirked when Mark walked into the maintenance bay. "Hey, Hale," he said, tapping his console. You still fixing pipes, or are you too busy fixing alien hearts now? Mark ignored him at first, but the jokes kept coming. Mixed household. Strange company. Soft on aliens. It was meant as humor, but it carried the same poison as every prejudice in human history. Still, Mark didn't care much what adults said. What hurt came later, through the children. One morning, Maya sat silent at breakfast, pushing her food around. "Dad," she murmured, "can I stay home today?" Mark frowned. "You love school. What's wrong?" Maya's small shoulders stiffened. They said our family is weird." He glanced at Sarah, who had paused mid-motion while packing lunches. Her tendrils had gone still, tight, guarded. "Who said that?" Mark asked quietly. "Some of the boys. The Praxians. And the counselor's son, Marin." Sarah's voice was calm, but her eyes darkened. "Counselor Trell Var's child?" Maya nodded. "He said I shouldn't play with me. That her mom was dishonoring her people." The air in the room changed. Mark felt the anger rise, heavy and hot. "Did he touch either of you?" Maya shook her head. "No, just said mean things." Sarah knelt by Iri, who sat quiet, her tiny hands folded in her lap. "You are not dishonoring anyone," she said softly. "Your father would be proud of you. Do you hear me?" Iri nodded weakly. Mark exhaled through his teeth. "I'll talk to the school." Sarah touched his arm. "Be calm. Words can be sharper than blades on the Atlas. Let us handle this carefully." But careful didn't last long. That afternoon, a message flashed on Mark's communicator. "Emergency, disciplinary meeting, education wing, 1400 hours." He arrived to find Maya sitting outside the office, lip trembling, and Iri beside her with tear-streaked cheeks. The administrator stood in the doorway, pale and nervous. Inside, Counselor Trell Var's tendrils flared in agitation. Mark's gut twisted. "What happened?" The administrator sighed. "There was an altercation. Apparently, your daughter struck Marin Various." Mark looked at Maya. "You hit him." She lifted her chin. "He pushed Iri. Called you a servant. Said humans only fix machines because we're too dumb for anything else." Sarah's voice came from behind him, steady and cold. "He also called me unfit to raise a Nidari child under a human's roof." Trellvar turned, his expression hard. "Your arrangement was always questionable. My son merely spoke what others already think." Mark's fists clenched. "Your son bullied 2 children. That's not opinion. That's abuse." The counselor's tendrils snapped in irritation. "Watch your tone, engineer." Sarah stepped between them, her composure unshaken. "Enough. This discussion is for the education board, not our tempers." Mark looked at her, then at the frightened girls. "If this station calls itself a home for all species, then equality isn't a suggestion, it's a rule." He opened his wrist display and began recording. "This meeting is now on record. Any attempt to intimidate my child, or hers, will go directly to station command." The administrator looked startled. Trellvar's glare darkened, but he said nothing. After the meeting, Sarah and Mark walked home in silence. The children trailed behind, holding hands. The artificial sunset painted their faces gold. "I shouldn't have let it get this far," Mark said finally. Sarah shook her head. "You did what any parent would do. But Trellvar will not forget today. Neither will I." That night, as the station lights dimmed, Mark stood by the viewport. Outside, the gas giant churned in endless storms. Massive, silent, unstoppable. He could feel that same pressure building here on Atlas Ring. Prejudice, fear, politics, different shapes of the same old human flaws. Yet when he heard Maya's laughter from the other room, mixing with Iri's soft voice and Sarah's quiet humming, he knew something else too. Humans didn't survive by staying quiet. They survived by standing tall, even when the stars were against them. Mark smiled faintly. "Let them talk," he whispered to the window. "We'll show them what family means." Behind him, the hum of the station deepened, like the calm before a storm that no one yet saw coming. Tension hung over Atlas Ring Station like static before lightning. The fight at the school had spread through the corridors faster than any transmission. Whispers filled the air, half-truths and rumors, each twisting reality into something uglier. The human engineer living with a Nidari widow, they said. Improper, reckless, dangerous. Mark tried to ignore it. He focused on his work, repairing atmospheric regulators, recalibrating power conduits. But every time he passed a group of workers, conversations stopped mid-sentence. The silence followed him like a shadow. At home, life pretended to be normal. The girls played, Sarah cooked. The smell of alien herbs mingled with recycled air. But the peace was thinner now, fragile, stretched tight. One evening, while Mark was finishing a late shift, his communicator buzzed. The message came from Sarah. Trelvar came by, uninvited. Mark dropped his tools and headed home immediately. When he arrived, Sarah stood by the door, her expression calm but her tendrils tense. He wished to speak privately, she said. About our arrangement. Mark frowned. He has no right to interfere. Sarah looked away. Among my people, he believes he does. He offered what he called a proposal, to make me his bondmate, to restore my dignity. Mark felt his pulse spike. He what? He said my presence with a human harms our people's reputation. That joining with him would end the gossip. And what did you tell him? Sarah's eyes met his, steady, unflinching. I told him no. That my home is here. That my choice is my own. Mark let out a breath, half relief, half fury. Good. Because I wouldn't let anyone, human or alien, decide where you belong. Her voice softened. Your defiance is admirable, Mark Hale. But it paints a target on your back. Before he could reply, a shrill alarm cut through the station. The floor trembled beneath them. The lights flickered red. Emergency alert. Pressure breach detected. Sector C-19. Evacuate immediately. Mark's instincts took over. That's my sector. He grabbed his toolkit. Stay here. Seal the door. Keep the girls safe. But Sarah was already moving. No. I come with you. It's not safe. Neither is sitting still while others die, she said sharply, already pulling on a maintenance jacket. There was no time to argue. They reached the lower decks as chaos unfolded, sirens screaming, engineers shouting over comms. A section of the outer hull had fractured, venting air into space. The backup regulators were jammed. One wrong move, and the whole sector would collapse. Mark sprinted through the corridor, patch kit in hand. Sparks rained from overhead conduits. Get those shutters sealed, he barked to a team of drones. He crawled into the damaged junction, the roar of escaping air deafening. Sarah knelt beside the auxiliary controls, her slender fingers dancing across alien symbols. Your human system conflicts with the Nidary interface. It's locking the failsafes. Can you override it? Yes, but I need power rerouted manually. That's me, Mark said, pulling himself deeper into the maintenance shaft. He reached the emergency conduit, ripped open the panel, and began rerouting circuits by hand. The heat was intense. One spark burned across his palm, but he didn't stop. Do it now, he shouted. Sarah pressed her hand to the console, tendrils glowing faintly. The alien systems responded, merging with the human network in a pulse of light. The sound shifted, the violent hiss became a dull hum. Pressure stabilized. The alarms faded. Mark slumped against the wall, gasping. That did it. Sarah turned toward him, relief softening her features. You're bleeding. He glanced at his hand. Just a burn. She reached out, wrapping her palm over his. Her skin was cool, glowing faintly as the Nidary healing gel activated. You risked your life without hesitation. Wouldn't be the first time, he said with a weak grin. But this time, I had help. Their eyes met, closer now, in the flicker of emergency lights. The space between them seemed to hum like the circuits they'd just repaired. For a long heartbeat, the chaos of the station disappeared. Then the comm crackled. Chief Hale, report. Mark broke eye contact, tapping his wrist display. Breach contained. C-19 stable. No casualties. Copy that, came the reply. You just saved half the deck. When they returned home, the girls ran into their arms, crying and laughing at once. The small apartment smelled of burnt wiring and tea, but to Mark it felt like paradise. Later that night, as the station shifted back to its artificial calm, Sarah stood by the viewport beside him. The blue storms of the gas giant reflected in her eyes. You could have died, she said softly. So could you. Her gaze lingered on him. Humans run toward danger instead of away from it. I am beginning to understand why your kind survives. Mark smiled faintly. We're stubborn that way. Outside, the stars burned bright and distant. Inside, something unseen had begun to burn just as fiercely. The storm was over, but a new one, quieter and more dangerous, was already forming between them and the station's politics. For 2 days after the breach, Atlas Ring Station ran on tense silence. Repair crews swarmed the damaged decks, while rumors spread through every level like sparks on dry wire. Words like sabotage, cover-up, and human error echoed in the corridors. Mark had heard them all before, but this time, he wasn't willing to let them slide. He'd nearly died patching that breach. So had Sarah. And something about the failure didn't fit. Late one shift, he sat alone in the maintenance hub, replaying data logs from the incident. The system readouts flickered across his visor. Oxygen drop, pressure flux, temperature spikes. Then he saw it. A ghost signature in the code. A manual override command from an external console, inserted minutes before the failure. Someone had triggered the malfunction. Mark's stomach tightened. The access code was encrypted, but the trace matched a high-level station ID. He decrypted the first line, and a name appeared. Assistant Counselor Rivek, Trelvar's personal aide. He stared at it for a long time before whispering, "You tried to kill us." By the next morning, word had reached command. Mark presented his findings in front of the station's council. Humans, Nidari, and other species all seated in a semicircle under the holographic emblem of the Interstellar Coalition. Sarah stood beside him, her presence calm, but her tendrils rigid with anger. "Engineer Hale," the human administrator said, "you claim the breach was intentional?" "I don't claim," Mark answered, his voice hard. "I prove." He uploaded the logs to the holo display. Lines of data scrolled, revealing timestamps and access trails. The override came from Counselor Trelvar's wing. This wasn't an accident. It was an attack. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Trelvar rose from his seat, his blue skin darkening in fury. "These are baseless accusations. That data could have been fabricated." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady. "Mark Hale risks his life daily to keep this station alive. His hands build what your pride threatens to destroy. If he says it was sabotage, I believe him." Her words cut through the noise like steel through silk. For the first time, the counselor faltered. The administrator's gaze shifted between them. "The evidence will be verified. Until then, Counselor, you and your aide are suspended from duties." As the guards led Trelvar out, his cold eyes locked on Mark. "You think this makes you a hero, human? You've only made enemies in higher places." Mark didn't flinch. "Then I'll fix that too." When the chamber emptied, Sarah turned to him. "You've made a dangerous choice." "I've made the right one." She looked at him for a long time, then smiled faintly. "That is what frightens me most." That evening, Atlas Ring felt lighter, as if the entire structure had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. The girls played near the viewport, their laughter echoing against the metal walls. Sarah brewed tea while Mark replaced the last burnt conduit in the kitchen wall. When he finished, she joined him at the table. The faint hum of the station surrounded them like a heartbeat. "You realize," she said quietly, "our lives will not return to how they were." "They never do," Mark replied. "But maybe that's okay." Outside the window, the gas giant turned slowly, its storms glowing like molten glass. The sight had become a comfort, an eternal reminder that beauty could exist even inside chaos. Sarah placed her palm gently on his, repeating the gesture she'd taught him once. "Among my people," she said, "the joining of hands after a shared trial means more than gratitude. It means you are part of the same path." Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. "Is that what this is?" She met his eyes. "If you wish it to be." The moment lingered, simple, human, alive. But the peace didn't last. A soft chime echoed from the console. An incoming transmission. Mark rose and tapped the screen. Static filled the air for a second, then cleared. A new voice spoke. Calm, mechanical, and unfamiliar. "This is the vessel Etherian, approaching Atlas Ring perimeter. We request docking clearance. Passenger aboard, Sarah Allen Whitey. Identification confirmed." Mark turned toward her, his heart sinking. Sarah's face had gone pale, her tendrils trembling faintly. "No," she whispered. "That ship shouldn't exist. It's from before the war." The voice repeated, clearer this time. "We come for the exile." Every light in the room flickered. The children went silent. Mark stepped in front of Sarah, his jaw tightening. "They'll have to go through me first." Outside, the stars burned brighter, as if waiting for the next chapter to begin. The storm was gone, but now, something far greater was coming.